Hello, I'm Pavel Zak. I came here from Czech Republic. I'm really glad that I could be here, that you have invited me to have this talk. The title is actually creating a game in SwiftUI, not just Swift. So in the next 30 minutes, I will share some of my experience with the SwiftUI, the new technology by Apple. But first, let me take you a bit to the past and share my personal story here. 7-8 years ago, I was quite failing PhD student. I was doing a lot of research related to user interfaces and computer vision graphics and such things, and I bought my first iPhone back then. And I didn't know that, but it actually changed the course of my career since, because I fell in love in doing mobile apps. And it happened that with my two colleagues, I had started a company called Trinerdis. Yeah, we were 3 co-founders, so you can guess the name. And during our active years, we did more than 70 mobile apps for Android, iOS, Windows Phone. It was quite crazy times for us back then. We did mostly client apps and also our own apps. We did games, some insurance apps, travel apps, whatsoever. And during those times, if I wasn't sitting in my office coding the apps, I was also playing a lot of gigs with my band. And our drummer was also a mobile developer, and we were a bit of competing. I was telling that the iOS is the best thing that can there be. He was Android supporter. So we closed the bet, who of us will create a better game till the end of summer. And I've even found a tweet, and you can see it was in June 2013, so it's kind of long of time since then. But I had this idea of the simple game, like board game, something between jigsaw puzzle and 15 puzzle, when you have tiles on the board and you can move them around with some operations. But you know, as it is usually with the side projects, they are never finished. And one of the reasons why I didn't finish this project was that actually I sold my company to one of our clients. At that time it was called a Skypicker. Nowadays it rebranded to Kiwi.com, maybe you know that. And my company became the mobile department of the Kiwi.com. So for the 5 years we have spent building only one mobile applications for the travelers. It's the app where you can buy flight tickets, train tickets, explore airport destination around yourself. And I kind of forgot about any side projects because I was occupied with this one solely. With my team this June, we have visited WWDC, and we were surprised how many new technologies were introduced back then. You are familiar with lots of them nowadays. iOS 13 is already out. But we got caught up by one of them mainly. This is SwiftUI. It is a new declarative way how to build apps for the Apple ecosystem. And we got the feeling that this is some sort of game changer. Even though it will be a bit slow to adopt it because lots of companies still need to support older iOS versions, it still is promising that it will be changing how we do apps for the Apple ecosystem now. And just during the week at the WWDC, my colleague already wrote some simple apps. It is a 15 puzzle, and he was able to run it pretty much on watchOS, iPhones, macOS, without any code changes and any hassle. And at that time, when I saw these screens, it just reminded me immediately my old prototype for back 2013, and I said, wow, it would be nice to actually try to re-implement it and learn something. I quickly forgot about that, but from different reasons, I stepped out of my positions at Kiwi.com this summer, and I was thinking what to do with my spare time, and I said, maybe I can learn something new because I'm already pretty old and I'm doing the same things for the 7 years over and over again. So let's start learning. So at this moment, I would like to share here some of my point of views on SwiftUI, what is good, what is not. and maybe try to motivate you to use it. So can I ask you at this moment, how many of you already tried SwiftUI or have some apps written in it? Wow, that's kind of a lot, but there is still majority who didn't, so don't be worried. I will take it from the start and try to explain why should you start using SwiftUI. Well, SwiftUI is, as I said, a new declarative paradigm of building user interfaces. It is quite common nowadays in web development, but for the iOS it's kind of new. If you wanted to do something like that, you needed to use some third-party libraries, but now you have the native way to do that. Basically, it is really simple. You have set of views, and you can modify them using so-called view modifiers. So I tried to, as a demonstration here, to mimic really basic layout of website of this conference. So you can see some logos, some text, some button, and for example, I don't know if you can read it. Or maybe I should step here. Doing a button is really simple. You have text view with some, and then you modify it with some view modifiers. You select font, you put some padding there, foreground color, border, and that's it. You have nice looking button. So this is the idea how you actually build up user interface. You have a live preview available, so all the changes that you are coding you can directly preview. And the view modifiers are basically methods that can change anything about your view. You can change layout, you can change foreground, background, foreground properties like colors, change gradient fills, set script shapes, set animations, transitions, whatsoever. Important thing about that is that everything is based on composition here. So when you have a view and you assign some view modifier, the resulting is also a view. And even a color is a view. So here on the another example, you can see that you can set a color and put some view modifiers like opacity, clip shape, and you suddenly get some view of shape within this color, with this color. The selling point for myself personally about SwiftUI, as I said, for this sort of game I wanted to create, was the animations. The animating systems, in my point of view, is simply amazing, and it doesn't require anything like rocket science for you to implement some animations or transitions. Everything is state-based, so almost any property of the view that you have and change can be animated. So for example, for my tile changes, I will play some video first. You can change the tiles around the board like this. It's pretty simple to set it up because you have the model, you change the coordinate of the tile, and just by setting the animation view modifier, you set how do you want to animate the change of the property. And that's it. You can choose from some spring animations, ease in, ease out, whatever. You can even define your own animation, and you don't need to write any CA transitions, animations whatsoever. The most awesome thing about it that all the animations are fully interruptible. That means that when you are doing changes in your state quickly, even before the animation is finished, the animation system during the animation starts to animate to different state. You can see it in slow motion on this animation, hopefully. Yes. So I start to press the buttons really quickly, and you will see that the tiles will starting to behave a little bit chaotic maybe, but they are always starting to animate into the position that reflects the current state of the game. And even when I reset the positions to the original state, they still know where they belong and are animated there. So you don't need to worry that you will get some state where the view doesn't reflect what you have in your model. If this isn't enough for you, you can use more view modifiers, and one of the most powerful related to animations is geometry effect. Geometry effect basically allows you to create any keyframe-based animation you wish. You can alter view within the view space during the interpolation as you wish. And it's especially useful when you want to animate between the states that are the same. It's hard to explain, but I will show it on the video. Notice the orange dot. The orange dot is moving from the line to line, and during the movement, it does this jumpy movement, you see. If you would be animating just between the states, the dot would be moving in the linear path, but we wanted to do this jumpy effect. So, using the geometry effect, we just let's say inject this movement to our animation, and for each time frame of the animation, we just alter the view space of the view. It may seem silly, but this is really powerful, and you can make any animation as complex as you wish. So I used this approach to create such logo. It's actually composition of two geometry effects, one that flips the letters and the other that moves the dot along the path. Simple as that. One thing is having the good-looking SwiftUI that can animate. The other thing is actually how to feed some data to the UI. There is another framework, pretty powerful, that is MOConfBy. I heard already some questions related to RX Swift, a few talks before. So MOConfBy is yet another declarative Swift API that actually is used for processing values over time. You can declare some publishers and subscribers and overview changes of your data within the model. What is nice about that when using MOConfBy, you can get rid of a lot of boilerplate. You can use some state for inner states of the view, or use simple bindings to bind some simple value to some value within your UI. Or for more complex objects, you can set them as observable objects, and just by setting any of the attribute of this object as published, you get all the functionality you want. So when you have such a structure like this, anytime I change coordinate that is published from my observable object, it reflects in the UI, and also when it changes and when there are set proper animation view modifiers, animation happens. So that's pretty easy. And another good thing is that you can use these environment observable objects and provide them to the view as environment objects. This has two advantages. One is that you don't need to create some complex init func interface. It's some sort of like dependency injection into the view, and also all subviews of the views have access to this environment objects, so you don't need to pass reference to your data through the hierarchy of your UI. But of course there is more. As I already mentioned, you have the cross-device support. You are able to mix any SwiftUI code with UIKit and vice versa. There has been introduced new set of icons, SF symbols, that allows you to use the icons basically in the similar manner as text. That means that, for example, in the accessibility settings, when user changes his preference of how big the font should be, this affects also these symbols and these icons. So it's more accessible also. it's really easy to separate the layout part from the appearance part. You can wrap some of your appearance code into the custom view modifiers and match your styling of your app much more reusable. And as I mentioned, the live preview is really great, especially in the first phases when you are learning stuff and you are doing a lot of trial and error approaches, and you can see already if you've messed up or you set the view modifier or set some view or layout correctly. So up to this point, it seems that SwiftUI is simply awesome. I started to dig into the SwiftUI when there was a beta 3 out, and I was living in beta mode since then. What is it about? It's usually doing it the hard way. Especially in the beginnings, it was really hard to keep up with the changes from the beta to beta. I had to install a lot of updates. I had to check really carefully what has changed and what are the compatibilities, because you had to have the right Catalina, you had to have the right iOS version, right Xcode. Sometimes something broke, and you had to wait till the new beta. In the beginning, especially, there were no documentation, so it was a lot of trial and error, and even some examples provided by Apple didn't work because the SwiftUI, some of the things just changed and they didn't update it. And one of the main pain points that I'm still perceiving is mixing gestures. For example, using some drag gesture on some parent view with some standard slider view is really hard, and you need to constantly find some workarounds, which is not nice. And the Xcode doesn't really help in this case. So when you mess things up, you can get completely misleading information. So either the Xcode highlights the different line of code, or it just complains that it's too complex and he's unable to type check it in a reasonable time, which doesn't help at all. But I've just recently, it was yesterday or 2 days ago, I just read that in the new diagnostic architecture planned for Swift 5.2, this should be already solved. So hopefully we will have some support here also. What else did I have to fix or find a way how to do? This is paging scroll view. There is scroll view available in SwiftUI, but it doesn't support paging as you are used to UI scroll view, so you have to implement it on your own. It's not so difficult, but it's work that, for example, you might not be expecting that you will be forced to do. Similar situation is with overlays. You have basically 3 ways how to do overlays. You can set action sheet, pop-up, or modal view. But if you need something specific, for example, I wanted to have modals that actually are over the view beneath and blurs it underneath, you need to implement it on your own. So even such simple things like this modal is a custom implementation. And as I said, it's not hard. SwiftUI is really helpful, and everything is like 10, 30 lines of code. But you need to think about it. You need to have support in your view models for that. And that adds to your development time. The thing that I spend most time at, and I also wrote some blog post about it, is messing with colors. I wanted to have some animatable colors and gradients and change colors in the HSV color space. And I noticed that when setting the hue rotation modifier in the top, you get just different color than what you would expect. It just simply doesn't preserve saturation and brightness values. And this is something that messed the feeling, for example, from my game. And I had to implement my custom interpolators and custom hue rotator to that. Again, it's possible, but unexpected. So the question may be, what state are we at? in my case, I have just finished the game. It took 2 months of development, and I'm pretty happy about it. There are still several to-dos in that I just wait for another updates or just decided that I will put aside and deal in the future. But you might ask, what about your situation? What about if you are having a huge app? Should I start invest some time into that? So my verdict is you need to choose really carefully what is your target application. For the games, definitely the SwiftUI is the wrong tool on the wrong job. It's probably much better to use any of the game engines that they are available. But for the apps, I see a bright side of it. I hope that from this talk, you will actually take away that you shouldn't be afraid of try using it. I think that already we are at the state that the community is growing, that the iOS versions, Catalina versions, Xcode is stable enough, even though there are some edge cases. And if you really want to start, here are my recommendations how. Definitely start with WWDC videos and tutorials by Apple. If you want some quick visual reference, Mark Moyens put all the stuff into one book. It has like 500 or 600 pages, and you don't need to read it really carefully or like deeply, but every possible situation that you might encounter, especially in the beginnings, are covered there. You don't want to how to set up toggle, just open the toggle and see all the examples and all the versions that you can, all the alterations that you can do to toggle. If you want to understand SwiftUI a bit more deeply, I recommend the SwiftUI Kickstart book by Daniel Steinberg. He also covers probably the basics, but with much broader context. He does iOS development probably since version 2 or something like that, and he understands how does view controller work and actually what is the motivation to move from UIKit to SwiftUI. And if you are okay with the basics, the advanced articles can be found at SwiftUI Lab, and the blog post by Majid, who is somewhere around here. I really like the work that these guys are doing because they are unstoppable and they dig really deeply into the problems and try to find a solution. So I myself have taken a lot of inspiration from their blog post, and I recommend to follow them as well. And that's it. I'm happy to answer any question I see. Thank you.